there are some questions to answer. Dear Ajahn, how do we identify the breath energy? What does it look and feel like? I'm not sure, thank you. So in Anapanasati, breath meditation in general, at first you're not trying to identify an energy. It's a mindfulness of feelings practice. So you're just trying to be mindful of how the natural breath feels. And other things will occur. The way you experience the breath as the breath becomes peaceful changes. There will be other feelings around. For myself, I begin being aware of the whole breath. For myself, I observe the breath here. When I'm observing the breath here with my eyes closed, I experience it more as like a globe expanding and contracting, but there are feelings at the beginning, middle and end, and a space, and more feelings beginning, middle and end. It becomes less of a body-based feeling, more of a mental feeling, but it is feeling associated with the breath. And then the breath gets more subtle, and then I try to keep awareness in that area because the spaces between the breaths get longer, and I try to keep that center of awareness, but still knowing when the breath beginning, middle and end, when each breath arises, stays for some time and ceases. So the wind energy is a different thing. Wind element is something that is flowing in the body, and aware of when one has enough mindfulness, that's a bit more advanced, but when one has enough mindfulness to take contemplation of the wind element, the in-breath is wind element coming in the movement, and the out-breath is wind element, and the blood flowing in the body is wind. But that is more advanced. Doing breath meditation, simply knowing the feelings of the breath. And then you also know, okay, the mind is with the breath, there might be tranquil feelings, serene feelings. There's another question about what to do when the breath appears to stop. I might answer it now. Many people have that experience that when they're with the awareness of breath and the mind becomes peaceful, it appears that the breath stops. And the breath actually doesn't stop. It gets more subtle. It becomes quite a shallow breath. But what happens is the peacefulness in the mind becomes more interested in the peace, so it actually takes the peacefulness as the object. So the mind is looking at the peace, holding the peace, not looking at the breath, so that's why you don't experience it, that's why you don't feel it, but it is there. And it's very important not to panic at that point. It's a very curious, interesting, kind of tragicomic experience that meditators have, is they desperately want to let go of the sense of self. They definitely want to be liberated. The mind becomes peaceful for a moment, and they panic. Oh my God, where's the breath? It's like, no. Oh my Buddha, where's the breath? Allow that peacefulness to fill the mind. As far as I know, nobody died practicing Anapanasati. In my experience of 30 years. You can allow the peacefulness to be in the mind. You can allow the breath to fall away. You don't have to panic. It's really important to trust. You have faith in the Buddha. Lord Buddha said this is the crown jewel of meditation objects. There was no warning. Don't do this. If the breath stops, see a doctor. You can trust it. It's a wonderful thing. This is why when Anapanasati is so wonderful, is that the breath gets more and more subtle, and it leads and inclines the mind to a peaceful state. And then it will naturally come out of that peaceful state. And so trust it, let go, allow the mind to be peaceful. I assure you the sense of self will come back. You won't die, it's not that easy. It's a good sign, actually. Try to keep the awareness wherever you were watching the breath. If the breath appears to disappear and it becomes peaceful, just stay there. Just stay still, stay quiet, and be interested. Don't do anything. The breath will come back, and you'll know it as soon as it does. Beginning, middle and end, beginning, middle and end. Sometimes it will go peaceful again. Fine. Then get familiar with that space and learn not to panic. Learn to trust the peaceful mind. A peaceful mind will give the mind the foundation to have insight. Investigating those feelings that arise and cease, just noticing cessation, 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 insights can occur. Dear Ajahn, I notice that my mind tends to veer towards the negative thoughts in meditation rather than positive thoughts. Why? How to overcome this? So this is common. The mind becomes overcome with negative thoughts. That's because we have had many negative thoughts, and we've allowed our mind to, in a way, remain untrained. So it's like we're dealing with an untrained mind, and we're beginning to train the mind. So it's normal. And in fact, recognizing that a thought isn't wholesome is probably development. In the past, we might not even know. We don't have enough right view to know what is wholesome, neutral, and unwholesome. We begin to practice, we get some knowledge, understand this is a negative thought, this is an unskillful thought, this is an unwholesome thought. That's actually the beginning of wisdom. Basic wisdom. We're studying what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. Identifying with it less is also growth. So just the fact that you know you're thinking a thought and you know it's negative. There's something else in that equation. It doesn't quite feel like it in the beginning, but there's a beginning to be that which knows with more clarity. We do have to train the mind to have positive thoughts and or at least grasp the negative ones less and not believe them as much. That is growth, actually. There's more clarity around it. But this is why we have to be diligent in the metta practice, in the mudita practice, in the forgiveness practices. We have to be disciplined because we are working with deep habits, and it does take time. Luang Por Biek says, if you don't get great results in your practice, it's no excuse not to practice, it's because you didn't practice much yet. That means you have to do much, much more practice this lifetime. Sadhu. Dear Ajahn, we practice noble silence, but it's at the physical level of speech, not the mind level. The chatter goes on and on. Short of attaining second jhana, where vitaka and vichara cease, what is the best way to tame the chatter? There's a few ways to approach a busy mind. The death meditation is very potent and powerful. It also ripens the mind to have insight into impermanence. So you have to do it in balance. One has to have loving kindness. One has to fill the heart area with loving kindness, establish good intentions. And then, if thinking goes on and on and on, you do have to train yourself to ask yourself, if I die today, is this important? And normally, if we're sincere in asking that question, there's like a pause. The mind stops for a while. Sometimes some stubbornness comes out. I won't die today. I know I'm not going to die today. Then you need to challenge it. Really? Really? Do you really know that? I've been to many autopsies as a young monk, and a good number of those people didn't know they were going to die that day. The young man whose appendix burst in his sleep, he had a stomach ache. He didn't want to go to the doctor, so he had a glass of whiskey instead. His appendix burst while he was sleeping. So I watched the doctor scoop out 5 liters of blood from his abdomen. He was young, didn't know he was going to die. The young man with a very handsome face, one little cut there, where he crashed into the pole at the side of the road when he fell off his motorbike. Died instantly. This happens. Tourists on a boat that sunk, drowned. And these morticians, they know from the state of the body how the body died. The prisoner with HIV, just skin and bones, he probably knew death was coming. But a lot of them didn't. My twin brother used to have one of those really big Ducati motorbikes. I think it was like over 2,000. And he once picked me up from the airport before I was a monk, and he went from 0 to 220 in about 10 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, that's enough now. Thanks, sis, that was very exciting. But when he came to see me in Thailand, I was a bit worried, because motorbikes do kill a lot of young men. So I was going into the jungle, and I wanted to see some autopsies. And before going to the jungle, I said, do you want to come with me? And he said, yeah, well, not really, but all right. And he came along, and I said, oh, look, Troy, this guy was on a motorbike. And he went back to Australia, and he sold his motorbike and got a sensible Japanese sedan. So more people, I think as many people die in their bathrooms as on the road. That's a very interesting statistic. I think people feel at home, they feel safe, comfortable, nothing's going to happen. Maybe the phone rings, and slippery soap suds on tiles. Trip over, bang. All you need to do is bang your head on a hard surface on the wrong angle. I had one monk friend who had diarrhea, fainted as he was getting off the toilet, fell over, broke his neck. I don't think he was 30. So this is the kind of thing we have to remind ourselves, I'm not going to die today, really. A lot of people die in cars, and there's the assumption that, you're paying attention, it won't be you. But what happens when someone else comes into your lane? And you can't do anything about it. So, awareness of death and impermanence, we have to be sincere. It does cut through obsessive thinking. And also when you have like negative thinking or holding a grudge, I don't care. I want to make him suffer, like he made me suffer. You have to ask yourself, see, where does that mind state? We tend to think that because I'm right, there's going to be some God that says, it's okay, you were just having a bad day. You get to go to heaven. It's not like that. If you die with a really negative mind state, your mind will go with what that mind state is resonating at. So if you're like a dog hanging onto a bone and growling, welcome dog life. We really have to think about this. What is this mind state? What realm is it resonating with? If I die right now, where am I going? Having that passionate sexual fantasy? Do you want to be a porn star? Oh God, nobody say yes, please. What about the life after that life? It's a very good practice. What is the quality of the mind state? What realm does it resonate with? If I died right now, where would the mind go? Ajahn Anand said, two most important factors of where minds do go when the body dies is the general level that the mind has been on throughout that life and the mind state at the moment of death. So Lord Buddha says it's like throwing a stick up in the air. We all have wholesome and unwholesome karmas. It's not guaranteed which end's going to hit the ground when the stick comes down. So those kind of sobering recollections, which are true. Like I said, it needs to be balanced with metta. Then picking up wholesome, reflective meditations. So if the mind has a habit of just being in negative thoughts. We have to pick up a wholesome recollection. So you can ask yourself, what is there in my life that I can be grateful for? We all have a gift for feeling sorry for ourselves. We all have a gift for thinking what people could have done, should have done, didn't do. And we train ourselves in remembering what people did do. This is a skillful antidote. Most of us have many things to be grateful for. Some people have a difficult parent, and the mind can dwell over angry thoughts, hurt thoughts. That parent was absent or neglectful or harsh. Well, who else in your life was kind? Who nurtured you, who nourished you like a parent? Which teacher was truly a mentor? Who, in a difficult time, was a good friend? What encouraged you? We can bring those things to mind. We have to balance the negative obsessions with positive recollections. So it is a path of effort. Lord Buddha does explain that. We do need to. It's one of the Eightfold Paths. We need to make an effort. We need to train the mind, and it does take time. It's perfectly possible. Ajahn, what is, the person spelled it excess concentration, but I think they probably mean access concentration. Access concentration is the jhana, so that's also called appana samadhi. Ajahn describes kanika samadhi, a few moments, up to 5 minutes of peacefulness. Upajjhara samadhi, the experience of neighborhood concentration. So neighborhood concentration means almost jhana, touching on jhana. There will be some thoughts, but they tend to be wholesome. And then the appana is what is sometimes called absorption, is one-pointed stillness, deep peacefulness. Short of attaining the second jhana, where vitakka and vichara cease, what is the best way to tame the chattering mind? So if you can get 5 minutes of peacefulness in a half an hour meditation, I think it's really helpful to develop some contentment and some gratitude for that. We can't keep looking at, I want to be in Aryan with second jhana, and then negating all of our experience until that point. The thing that makes it possible to experience more peacefulness is being grateful and content with the peacefulness that you have. And then if you recognize that in half an hour I'm having 5 minutes of peacefulness, you recognize that's the beginning, that's the start, that's the potential, then that has to be nourished and watered. And so it might be the case that if you continue with your practice, that you'll get 5 minutes of peacefulness 3 times within half an hour. Some hindrances, some peace. Some more hindrances, peace again. A few more hindrances, more peace. And then one continues, try to do 2 sessions a day. Start to experience the upajjhara samadhi where the mind is peaceful 10, 15, 20 minutes. On some days, that's the upajjhara samadhi. And the thoughts that impinge on upajjhara samadhi tend to be somewhat wholesome, not very negative. So you don't have to hate those thoughts. Just appreciate the peacefulness. It's appreciating the peacefulness and recognizing the peacefulness and continuing with the practice, and it deepens and it deepens. In the first jhana, that it says the mind in the first jhana can be accompanied with thought. The first jhana is extremely peaceful, so whatever thoughts that lead to first jhana, you don't need to be in a contentious relationship with that. It's not that no thoughts is the goal. And in reflective meditations that lead to the first jhana, thoughts are skillful, wholesome. The right thought is one of the Eightfold Path. You need to use your thinking. So develop an appreciation for the capacity of a reflective mind. The 3 types of developing wisdom: through listening and studying. The next one is through contemplation. Contemplating wisely. leads to the wisdom that comes from the deeper insight, the vipassana, etc., paths and fruits. So training thoughts to be wise, training the mind to see a thought just as a thought, not grasping at them, noticing them arise and cease, developing more space around them, using them to lead the mind into states of concentration. So even the Arahants, I know a couple of them, they have thoughts. They have thoughts. They're just not identified with them. They don't think they're a self. They need to use them. How are you going to formulate a sentence? How are you going to teach your disciples? You don't have thought. So yeah, we try not to bring contentiousness to it. Appreciate peacefulness. Train your thoughts. What is access concentration? Once we reach this stage, what shall we work on? So when the mind comes out of a peaceful state, that's when practitioners will usually then contemplate the nature of the body. So if a person has jhana, has the capacity to bring a lot of stillness and steadiness, and then they can see the bones and the teeth and the hair as earth, or see the blood, the lymph as water. And the mind sees that very clearly. It sees that it's not a self. And many people have become stream enterers, contemplating the nature of the body as elements. Dear Bhante, during lying down meditation, after scanning the body, bringing attention to all of the touch points, the body became very calm, very peaceful. The body and mind, at one point, feeling as if there's no contact with the bed, like a floating feeling. After some time, there's a sensation as if the body was shaking, more like quivering, mostly at the head and the upper body, accompanied by a slight feeling of rapture. It went on for a few minutes and then continued for 5 to 10 minutes, so that would be rapture. There's various ways that the mind experiences rapture, so that can be in the lying down posture, it can be in a standing, walking posture, it can be in a sitting posture. When there is, if you are with your meditation object, so this person was doing a body sweeping and they were present in their body, consciously relaxing. You're with your breath consistently, various ways that tranquility can be experienced. One of those ways is a feeling like you're floating. The body can feel spacious and light, and the mind can feel like the sky, as vast as the sky. But the converse is the mind can feel very heavy, like a mountain or a rock, but feel very steady. There's a quality of peace there. And quivering is one of the signs of rapture. When you're looking at the factors of jhana, ekagata, what is it? Vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata. Placing the mind on the object, being consistently with the object. Rapture, and then tranquility, one-pointedness. So Ajahn describes the rapture as being like the waves on top of the sea. It's a kind of, it's pleasant, but it's a little bit agitated if you compare it to tranquility. And he says what we should aim for is a deeper serenity. So we try not to get too distracted, too fascinated with feelings of rapture, but that can be hair standing on end, tears rolling down your eyes. It's wholesome. It means the mind is with the meditation object to some degree. But then we try to dive deeper, aiming for deeper, more steady tranquility, serenity. So, good signs. Dear Ajahn, when I was doing metta meditation, I included "May all beings be well." After a while, I could see myself sometimes sitting and sometimes traveling fast, deep into the universe. This happened as I tried to expand my metta as far as as far and wide as possible. May I ask Ajahn why this happened? So we do have very dynamic minds, and one of the things I was saying last night when I was saying to spread metta to other people was to try not to send your mind to that person, but to bring them in front of you and radiate in front of you. Because the mind will, many people have that experience of spreading metta and then thinking of someone on the other side of the world, might be a kid in college or something. And then what happens is it feels like the metta's all gone. You sent it to the other side of the world and it's like you have to start again. But if you, because the mind does actually, we can send it out in seconds. And what we're training in doing is being more centered and radiating the metta from where we are. You don't have to send the mind out. But it does take training because the mind is very fast. And it's a bit exciting, isn't it? Imagine filling the whole universe with metta. It is a bit of a superhero. So superhero imagery comes flying through the universe spreading metta. I'm sure the very advanced practitioners can do that. So. Dear Ajahn, how can I overcome the habit of compulsively lying? Oh no! Really? One of my students? So here comes the fire and brimstone. Very, very serious. Lie and be lied to. Does anyone want to be deceived? They say the devil is a charming man. The more karma you make with deception, the more people are going to deceive you. There might be some kind of sort of justification. They don't know. They won't know. If you get very sophisticated in your lying, you're going to meet very sophisticated liars. We don't get away with anything. In terms of a spiritual practitioner, we liberate the mind from ignorance and delusion by seeing things according to their true nature. So it's seeing things clearly, truthfully, is what liberates us. If we make karma with deception, you might meet some charismatic teacher that seems really convincing and that what they're teaching is wrong. And when you should be meditating one way, they'll say, no, don't do that. Meditate this way. And there was Devadatta's an interesting character in the time of the Buddha. I sometimes wonder, he wandered off for a period of time with a big chunk of Lord Buddha's disciples. And it's interesting to wonder, isn't it? Why were those bhikkhus prone to Devadatta's presentation of what he thought the superior Dharma was? And why were the other ones not? Fortunately for those bhikkhus that went off with Devadatta, Sariputta and Moggallana went and rescued them. They obviously had good karma. But if we don't have that kind of good karma, we have here in the Buddha's life story an interesting example of monks who knew the Buddha, had met the Buddha in the time of the Buddha, were deceived by another monk and believed for a period of time that his teaching was superior and followed him. Why? Some kind of probably having deceived and be deceived. But because they had powerful, potent merits and the Buddha had great compassion, Sariputta and Moggallana rescued them. You want to take the contemplation further, why did Devadatta do that? Devadatta knew the Buddha. And then this has these upakilesa, negative qualities that darken the mind, overtake the mind for a period of time. Competitiveness is one of them. Jealousy is another. So you're jealous of him, and you're competitive. You think you're going to do better than him, steal all his disciples. Obviously, the Devadatta had psychic powers for a period of time. Had enough merit to be born human, meet a Buddha, become a bhikkhu, receive royal patronage. So a lot of dana, a lot of sila, a lot of cultivation. But the mind was prone to these kilesas of competitiveness. It's interesting, I quite like these samsaric contemplations that apparently Ajahn Mahabua said, don't develop too much contempt and judgmentalness for Devadatta. Once he gets out of a Vijji hell, he's born as a human being, he's going to be a Pacceka Buddha. He had developed a lot of dana, a lot of sila, he did have wisdom. Now that the Buddha is enlightened and he's not deluded by competition with him and he applies himself, he'll liberate his mind. Apparently Mahamoggallana, not that many lives before he was a great disciple, was Mara himself. It's another interesting samsaric contemplation. Kind of makes sense because Mahamoggallana wanted to be equal in power. So if you're really into power, so it just takes a little bit of a detour, doesn't it? Okay, how about the power of kilesa? It's like Darth Vader. Luke, come, you can have the power. And it's deluding. Power's deluding. You can be the CEO of Kilesa Incorporated. Get a very nice condo, looking down on everything. Of course, they have to go to hell afterwards. It says the samsaric perspective is very important because it's not just what you get this lifetime, it's what comes afterwards. But even Mahamoggallana, he did go to hell after that. Can you imagine? And then comes back, gets back with the program, power of goodness, power of Dhamma, and he becomes the chief disciple, and he was particularly gifted in helping practitioners get from the stream entry to the Arahant level. So because of his psychic powers, he could see your latent tendencies, what character type you have, what meditation will work for you. He helped millions, I don't know if it was millions, but a lot, probably millions, of people to finish off, become one of the noble ones. The same person, dear Ajahn, my family is verbally abusive. How can I practice right speech and forgiveness towards them? So, healthy boundaries. I think, again, we're speaking about the samsaric perspective and karma. It's humbling and it's unpleasant sometimes, but we do receive back similar to what we gave out. It doesn't make sense necessarily as a contemplation if you're just looking at one lifetime. But we are Buddhists, we have right view, Lord Buddha explained. Conventional right view, there is past lives, there are future lives. So if people are verbally abusive, we have been verbally abusive. How to forgive them? Yeah, it's what I was saying a bit earlier. It's like, if you continue to be contentious, that's attachment, negative attachment. You want to keep being born in the company of these people? You want to keep fighting with these people? Do you want to meet new people, lovely people? If you want to meet lovely people, you have to start being lovely. You have to be the Kalyanachon, the lovely being. Sometimes with our family members, we need to take some space. If they trigger negative qualities, like make sure that the time you spend with them is somewhat contained. And make sure you associate with wise and kind people. And the metta practice. I think one of the best ways to approach forgiveness is when you're holding the grudge and you're feeling hurt, and you're doing your breath meditation, you're having a look at that. It's like, you just remind yourself, if I can forgive, I won't have to have this feeling anymore. It's like a forgiveness practice as being a gift to yourself. Wouldn't it be nice to put down the grudge? Wouldn't it be nice to allow this hurt to arise, stay for some time and cease? Wouldn't it be nice to allow the past to be the past? And oftentimes that works. It's okay, I'm going to forgive you. And sometimes if someone's hurt you really badly, you have to approach it slowly. It's like, okay, I'm going to forgive you 25%. You hurt me so bad, I'm not ready to forgive you. I'm going to forgive you 25%. And just feel what that feels like, to have 25% less grudge, less resentment. It feels nice. Keep practicing. Okay, I'm going to forgive you another 25%. I've forgiven you half now. And it actually does work. It sounds silly, but it works. I know I did it. And then what's really interesting about forgiveness practice is you can completely forgive. And then next week you're angry at them again. Because the mind, the second hindrance, irritation and aversion, is looking for something to be upset about. And so forgiveness practice is ongoing. You have to remember, oh, that's right, I forgave them. I have to forgive them again. It's like that. All the best with your process of forgiveness. And stop lying. Dhirajan, what advice do you have to manage depressive states and mind? So, this is tricky. I think with a habit of depression, this affects the neural patterns of the mind. And it's almost like once a depression is triggered, it's going to be around for a certain amount of time, the way the chemicals and things flow. If you can catch a depression early on and not fall into it, so what can you do? I think exercise is very helpful. You're feeling I'm about to get depressed. I can feel something's triggered me, I'm about to fall into a depression. Go for a run, go for a swim, go for a walk in the garden. And the metta practice. So you have to preemptively, when the mind isn't depressed, train it in other ways of thinking. Mudita, gratitude. This is like training the mind in having the mind does release different chemicals, the brain releases different chemicals in meditation, so you will have some serotonin, things like that. I think the very thing that's in Prozac, your own mind produces when you meditate. If you have a wholesome meditation object. It's also in chocolate. Maybe that's why monks like it so much, but I don't. The brain produces it when you fall in love, serotonin. Yeah, I don't recommend falling in love. And so yes, we have to be disciplined outside of the time when we're not depressed. We have to be really disciplined. You know, I have this weakness or this challenge. I have to learn to think wisely, to generate positive mind states. And then as the depression is coming, try to, if you can, preemptively, almost like distract the mind skillfully with something wholesome. Go and be generous. Go and do something helpful. And go for a run, go for a swim, do something. And I was somewhat prone to depressions as a junior monk, and I noticed that with practice, and I noticed that it would be kind of around for 3 or 4 days. Now if I get depressed now, maybe it's half an hour. So I can see that habit is just getting lighter and lighter. And it's not that the world can be really depressing, right? It's not that there aren't things to be depressed about. There's a lot to be depressed about. But being depressed doesn't help the situation. So we also notice what triggers us. Is it a particular thing that triggers the mind into depression? Can you avoid that thing? Can you limit your contact with that thing? And yeah, all the best. Dear Ajahn, can you please comment on this statement? Falling in love is an obstacle to meditation. It consumes the mind all the time. Does it? I would agree that it's an obstacle to meditation. When you fall in love, you're not going to think, I'm going to go meditate. What do you think when you fall in love? Stupid things like, I'm going to go and get some flowers, and I'm going to buy that perfume. Waste some money. The thing is that we're wired for it, I think. Human beings, we're wired to fall in love. Part of it's biology, part of it's our latent kilesas, part of it's karma. But I think the organism, part of the reason you fall in love is to reproduce, biologically speaking. Fall in love, you want to make love, then there's babies, right? The species continues. And then a week or two, or a month or two, or a year or two, you're like, how did I ever love this person? Well, something happened in the brain, right, that affected perception for a period of time. If you're lucky, it was a nice person that you fell in love with. And if you're skillful, when you fall out of love, you still love them as a friend. And so yes. I have a somewhat romantic nature, unfortunately. And I got somewhat skilled at noticing my mind fall in love and fall out of love, because I'm a monk. And so as a junior monk, every now and then get infatuated, fall in love a little bit, have some fantasy. And it's very interesting, because if you can't buy the flowers, and if you can't buy the perfume, and if you can't go and say, hey, see if you get a response, what happens? If it doesn't get fed, it just changes and ceases. Oh, isn't that interesting? And you notice, like, if I wasn't mindful, and if I wasn't a monk, I might have tried to marry that person. Oh, what a disaster that would have been. So I noticed my mind fall in and out of love several times. Don't do that anymore, of course. But so yes, if you do fall in love, seek professional help. You have to be realistic. Look, you do have to notice that chemicals are affecting your brain. And well, what is this thing about? Someone tells me these nice boys I know that don't seem to be able to find girls, and they tell me girls these days, they only like bad boys, Ajahn. Really? Well, and what is that? Like, why would you fall in love with somebody bad? It's those chemicals, isn't it? It's your biology saying that one's got good genes. Sexy one, sexy genes. You have to imagine what they're going to look like when they're 40, 50, 60. Because, you can apply some wisdom to this and apply your contemplation of aging. But it takes a discipline. Most people, they start thinking about the person they're in love with, the mind will tend to go towards sexual thoughts. But if you have some discipline with it, it's like, okay, the nose wants to smell that bit, the tongue wants to taste that bit. So you have to, okay, what will it smell like the morning after? The mouth. Okay, get serious. What do they smell like if they don't bathe for a week? The one that you're in love with. If they don't bathe for a week, you still want to be close to them. If they didn't brush their teeth for 2 days, you want to kiss them. I'm serious. You have to notice what the mind's thinking about, what it wants to smell, what it wants to taste. Okay, be a bit creative. Use the fantasizing mind to make it a wise reflection. Will you still love them if they're 20 kilograms heavier? What about if they're bald? They probably snore. Will you still love them if they snore? Yes. If you do fall in love, I would say observe it for a while before making karma. See if you still feel that way next week. Spy on them from a distance. Are they nice to children, old people and animals? Telltale signs. Because sometimes people are very charming, right? If they like you and they want you to fall in love with them, it's like a performance. Is it the real them? I've been talking too long. I hope something that I said was helpful to you. I wish you all the best in your practice.